Gerard, my man, we just tried to start this podcast and the universe said no. It said, no, we're not ready yet.
Yeah.
You need to bring more fucking of the heart to this. Para el bien de todos, for the good of all. Here we are, setting the right intention, and all the audio is going to work this time. So what I was saying before was you embody this kind of classic success story of someone who had an idea, put their passion, put their sweat, put their love behind something, were able to actually monetize that in an incredibly dramatic way, make the transition yourself into a mentor fast. And then also for yourself, follow your own journey about, all right, now that I've done these things, what does success mean? But for those of you who don't know your story, you have a great 2-minute video about that encapsulates your story, but you can kind of share some of this because it's a really interesting and cool story about that element of your kind of rise to where you are now. And of course, we'll talk about where you're going next.
Cool. Absolutely. And like I was saying earlier, I just want to say, man, my utmost gratitude for giving me this opportunity to bond with you and build this relationship with you and share with you. You're someone I've admired for a really, really long time. So I look forward to building that relationship, learning from you, because you're someone I think that is really tapped in, consciously as a CEO, and just what you've created is just pretty cool. So I know it's a long time coming, man.
Yeah.
That we would finally get this opportunity to meet. Man, the journey's been pretty crazy to even think looking back, because I feel like every year is like a just new chapter for me. And I know it's like that for everybody, but my, it all started for me when I was growing up in New Jersey. I had really great parents. And I feel like because of having a strong foundation growing up, it allowed me to be the man that I am today. And basically,
so what was because I think the formula that I've kind of seen and the formula that I've had is I've had a combination of genuine love, acceptance, but also a little bit of pressure, a little bit of challenge, a little bit of, did you find that in your family, or were you able to just immediately, because you had such a strong foundation in your family, just immediately go out and seek the external pressure that's available to us all in the world, in this striving for success, in the challenges that are kind of out there at large? Or did you also find those in your family and in your upbringing as well to kind of create who you are?
So the pressure was definitely there. I've talked about this in some other interviews. For the majority of my career, I've been trying to prove myself.
To who?
It started off with my father, started off with my family. Then it started, my friends, the kids I surrounded myself with growing up. Then it was to the business world. When I became an entrepreneur, it wasn't the cool thing it is today. Instagram didn't exist. I remember wanting to put on a suit every day and going into meetings and trying to look the part with these executives and trying to get business. So I just feel like throughout my career, I've continued to try to prove myself that I can do this, and prove myself also to myself as well.
Sure.
But definitely from a young age, there was that pressure from my parents.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's that combination of, again, pressure.
Yeah.
And then support, and I think having both is helpful. Now you can overcome just pure pressure. I know some people who have dramatic success stories where it was just all fire. You know what I mean? No sanctuary, all fighter. They put on their gear, they put on their hard hat, and they're like, nope, fuck it, I'm going to work. And then they get to kind of some of the deeper internal work later. But yeah, interesting. And I think another interesting part of your story is, it wasn't dependent upon some Ivy League education or whatever. Actually, the college you mentioned is actually a school I don't even know. What was that school?
Caldwell College.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Right. And people think, oh yeah, to be someone as successful as you sold your business, for $50 million to the Daily Mail, man, that's gotta be some Harvard shit. Nah.
No, my father wanted me to go to Princeton. That was the pressure again.
There it is.
I just wasn't.
My dad had me visiting Princeton too.
Yeah, for sure. School. I really didn't, conform to that learning in that atmosphere. I wasn't a great student. But I was a natural born hustler, and I think looking back at it, most recently, I had a discussion with my father. Gary Vaynerchuk's team wanted to do an interview for his birthday, and for the first time ever, I got to be face to face with my father and talk to him about this. And he's like, Gerard, he's like, I remember when you were 12 years old, and I asked you to paint the backyard fence. He was like, you were like really young. I was like, I want you to go and paint the fence. I'm going to give you $10. And he's like, I didn't think you were actually going to do this. He's like, but I came home, and he's like, I remember you sitting down and the whole freaking fence is painted. And he's like, how did you do that? And you responded that, well, you said you'd give me 10. So I went and got a couple of the guys from the neighborhood, and I gave them 5. I told them I'd buy them lunch. And we got the whole fence painted, and I'll give you my $10. And he's like,
because I got people to pay.
Yeah.
You got to own up to your part. You promised me 10. 5 of that's already spent.
Yeah. And I don't even remember that stuff, but my father said that was the moment that he knew that I kind of had this, like, a little bit of this entrepreneur side of me, even though both sides of my mother, was born in Colombia and Cali. My father's side, they immigrated here from Italy. So education was really important. They wanted me to get that college degree. They wanted me to have that security. They grew up in a time where college, the American dream was that, right? Get a good education, get a good job. That was how you became successful and like somewhat of the American dream, how when they got here. So they really wanted that for me. And I wanted that. And I wanted to prove that I can be that person for them. But quickly, my first semester, I was like, this is definitely not for me. I felt school in itself was a business, getting me into debt, telling me what classes to take in order to get to the classes I wanted to take to learn about business. So yeah, I ended up just dropping out my first semester and, going through the pressure again of looking like a failure that most of
and the doubt that would come in from your parents, the judgments about what school meant, your parents I think parents have a lot of pressure because they want to talk to their other peer group and be like, yeah, no, my son's doing good. Like Gerard's doing good. He's in college. And, it's like safe for now, and it's like almost playing scared a little bit that I think some parents, I'm not projecting this on your parents, but I know my dad was like that. Like he wanted me to go to Goldman Sachs after I got out of school. And I fucking didn't care about finance. I didn't want it. But for him, I think he would have been able to tell his other financial buddies, like, oh yeah, my son, he's off at Goldman Sachs. And they would have been then, good job, Michael. You've done well with him. He's there at Goldman and, like blah, blah, blah. But it wasn't me. It wasn't my song. It wasn't the song that I had to sing. And of course, as you start to sing your song with confidence, then typically your parents will be like, oh yeah, nice work, man. Like, glad you followed your intuition. Glad you followed your own path. And I think that's the thing that we all have that point of resistance, which is healthy, but then stepping beyond that, that's where the magic starts to happen. Yeah.
And I think that's where like great parenting really is. Because like we didn't have a lot, but the one thing I can't say my parents, even though they gave me that pressure and that love, they allowed me to follow my instinct.
Mm-hmm.
If I was like, I'm kind of doing this, and there was, although I might have had some of that doubt, although they were scared and they feared that like, oh, maybe I, who knows what was going through their head. Now I'm dropping out of college. They probably thought I was
live with me. He might live with us forever.
Well, they caught me hustling
right
before that, my senior year. So I can only imagine how scared they might have really truly been, but they still, even through that,
they caught you hustling. What does that mean?
Yes. Well, my senior year, I ended up
in high school.
Yeah, I ended up getting caught up and getting involved with the wrong group of kids. This gang in my school that basically was like, "Hey, take this out. Let's see what you can do with it." And I became really great at selling weed, like And my father, he came downstairs, and I had the scale out, and I had my whole bed filled with bags, and yeah, that was the first time that like my father really looked at me. And my father was old school Italian, so growing up, you got the belt, you got beat up a little bit, my dad didn't take no shit.
Yeah.
But that was the first time he just was like, I'm really disappointed. And if you get caught, don't call home. You don't, you're not going to be part of this family.
Right. And what was that point of reflection for you? Because obviously there's a massive amount of financial opportunity in these. First of all, it's crazy that weed is illegal. It's still in some places and was illegal always. It's a plant that makes people happy. Like everybody needs to fucking relax universally about this. But nonetheless, like that was a hustle that's been made available by this artificial scarcity condition that our government in its infinite wisdom has created in the illegalization of marijuana. But, you know, that hustle obviously comes with a big risk for that. So what was that moment? Was that the moment where you were like, you know what? Like, you're right, Dad? Or was there resistance there? Like, what was kind of going through your head at that point?
No, there was total resistance at that point. Like, that was the first time that I felt good. Like, I had cash in my, I had this cash in my wallet. I felt like I was valued. I was going every day. I was the first one to get my license in high school because they could have held me back or kept me forward. They held me back. So I was the oldest of my class. So I every day was driving people home, smoking blunts, freaking dropping off to my friend's mom. You know what I mean? Like, I loved it. You know, I had my JLW7s knocking in the back, doo-doo brown. I was feeling great, Yeah. So I was like, no, I'm not going to stop. It didn't really hit me. When it hit me was when I got pulled over. And, I've talked about this in the past, but cops, woo, 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 all around me. And in that moment, I was like, shit, like, no, now I'm fucked. Like, now I am not going to be able to call home. I'm going to be this failure, all that stuff. And there was a person committing Grand Theft Auto actually in front of me. And, and the cops came, flashlights in my eyes. Like, what are you doing? I was like, hey, I'm just picking up my friend from high school. Sean comes outside and is like, hey, I know Gerard, we go to this high school. And lo and behold, it was his mom that I would drop off to every single day. And lo and behold, so he comes out, and then the cop ends up finding out that they were there because of that person in front of me committing Grand Theft Auto. And they're like, hey, kid, get out of here. And when I pulled off that day, I felt like I had a second chance, a guardian angel of some sort, my grandmother. And I was just, at that moment, that's when I was like, all right, I have to make a switch. I'll go to college. And where am I going to get into? Caldwell College.
I tend to find that the universe gives these little warnings, like these, if you're paying attention, like you could have taken that and been like, oh, that didn't mean anything. It wasn't that. I'm good. Like, I'm good. Just shake it off, like shrug it off like a dog that ran into a screen door that didn't see it, and just fucking shake real quick and be like, okay, whatever. But you didn't. You made the choice then to be like, oh, that's like a warning shot. You know what I mean? Because that could be the real shot later. So to your credit, I think it is to just listen to those signs that are available, because typically, sometimes shit just happens, boom, chaos right out of the gate. You don't get a break, and that's a different way to learn. But I tend to find that when I look back at those things that have been really, really challenging, like there were some warning shots that I kind of probably ignored, some moments where I could have been like, oh yeah, I could have known that a little bit beforehand.
Yeah, no, for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, well, anyways, that is one of the classic hustles of all classic hustles. And so you had that, you knew that about yourself. You knew that about yourself from the fence painting days, and then proved it again in a different field. And then, all right, drop out of college. Then what made you realize like that kind of media company that you wanted to start? Like, what was the fruition of that? Like, how'd you come to that?
Yeah, so I'll try to fast forward a little bit, because a lot of people know me because of the Elite Daily. But I was an entrepreneur for about over 10 years prior to Elite Daily.
Okay.
So between, I guess right around when I graduated and I dropped out of my first semester, that's probably around like 2004, 2005. We started Elite Daily 2010, just to give you some context. So for those 5 years in between that, when I first dropped out, I found a mentor that was involved in actually stocks and investing. And I wanted to learn about that. Because my father was interested in Wall Street, and he worked at Prudential, and he would talk to me about it all the time. So that first mentor kind of taught me how to invest. And that's how I initially started to be able to make money. He started teaching me how to read SEC filings and, how to read an income statement, a balance sheet, how to go and like research these companies. And so I started trading when I first dropped out. And then I grew a passion for marketing. I really grew a passion for like all these companies I was discovering all had this unique story about them. And I realized that the way that they were marketing their story was by a very traditional means, and road shows and press releases, but they weren't leveraging the internet.
Yep.
So I was like, well, let me give this a shot. So I actually started an online community for traders to learn about these different companies, and had it where it was each member had a rating 1 to 5 stars, and based on how good you were at picking stocks, you would have 5 gold stars, for instance. And if you, so based on that rating, so it gave a place for traders to come together. And then through that, I ended up starting to get some advertising clients and started reaching out to companies. It was like, hey, do you want to advertise on my platform? And I ended up getting another mentor, a CEO out of New Jersey, who was reinventing the battery using nanotechnology. He's like, how old are you? And I was like, well, I'm, 19, 20. And well, come and meet me. I want to meet you. And he brought me to his office, and that's when I was suiting up as a young guy, no facial hair, trying to impress this guy. But he was really just like, I can't believe you're building this, and I don't think you have any idea what you're doing. And he's like, I want you to work for me, and I'm going to teach you about investor relations and public relations. And I'm going to mentor you, and you can stay and work here as long as you like work building your website at the same time, as long as you get your job done.
Yep.
So I started literally while my friends were partying in college, I was sleeping at this office. I didn't go home. I was there till 3, 4 in the morning. He's teaching me everything about investor relations and public relations. I'm writing all his press releases at that point. I grew his shareholder base to 18,000 shareholders. I started, continuing to build my website, and I loved it. And I was obsessed at the company's technology. To this day, I still don't understand why we have to charge our cell phones every single day, multiple times. Everything else is evolving so quickly, but battery technology hasn't really, caught up to everything else. And I loved it. I was going to Lucent Bell Labs with him, and I just, again, storytelling. And for me, I was doing videos on this company. That was when I really started to grow my passion for storytelling.
Sure.
And then basically I started to build a marketing agency to do what I did for that company. And
you know how crazy parallel our stories are in some ways? Like a lot of people know about one of the most interesting companies I did marketing for, which was the Fleshlight, which was actually my stepdad's company. But I had a whole period where I was doing almost exactly the same thing and working with small cap companies.
Really?
Like this company out of Edmonton, Virex Medical Corp. I go in, it's all scientists. Dr. Lauren Terrell, he'd come up with a new antiviral treatment, and they were working on ovarian cancer treatments, harnessing the immune system's power. But it was a very complex idea, and it was very hard to translate that to, because this is a pre-market, pre-market company that didn't have, a bunch of revenue coming in. So this was all about
just like
investors
pre-phase
and beliefs.
1 probably.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they had phase 2
Oh,
actually.
phase 2, okay.
But they had to kind of like reposition their phase 2 a little bit because it worked with a subset of the data set. But they got another big company to kind of back them for a phase 3. So they were in this process, but they're still in this kind of raising money. And it was a really interesting but complex story. Yeah. So I was like, immediately upon listening, I started to assimilate that and started to create videos for them explaining the technology. Like, this is how the technology works. And we got animators to animate how the technology works and like how these murine antibodies would affect, the ovarian cancer cell and all of the different things that happen. And I did that with a couple different companies where it was just
Me too.
And then talking to the investors. And I had like a big moment. I think I was like 26 or 27, where I was actually on tour on the road show with the president, the COO of the company at the time. And he had a nervous breakdown at UBS here in New York. And I knew the material cold because I made the presentation, I made the videos, like I understood the technology, I understood everything there. And like, he just had one of those moments where he was exhausted or whatever. It's just started full body sweats, like body shut down. And we're in the offices of UBS, which is one of like obviously the biggest banks here, right? It was like the big one that we were going to. And I was like, yeah, all right, fuck it, I'm on. So I just fucking led the presentation and did the whole thing myself. And they were like, and they weren't interested in investing, but the guy, I remember the VP, whoever we were presenting to, was like, hey man, that was really fucking cool what you just did in there. And like took me out to eat. And then,
this is crazy.
And I was like, I got an entree into that world. And then I got introductions to other companies, crazy gold mining companies.
Me
and
too.
energy companies.
That's how I made
Bullion
my initial
River
money.
Gold.
What was the name of the company?
Bullion River Gold was the company. But yeah, it was this company out. But anyways, doing the same thing, like talking about how I could explain to people about like the different opportunities. And
it was exciting.
It was exciting. Every company I worked with went to zero, but nonetheless, like the experience of like telling stories and understanding how to translate a complex idea into something that was understandable. I mean, that's skills that I've been able to use my whole life.
It taught me so much. I mean, you're right? Like 99% of those companies fail. So you learn about failure early on. I got to see so many of my clients fail, like all these management teams. And I was just like, whoa, like what they do, how they how they mismanage their funds, and just basically, I don't know, just tons of things, man. Like, and that's how I really learned a lot about early on failure, how important management was, how important it was to, if you're raising money, to, be careful of how you're actually spending that money.
Yep.
A lot of these companies, they would just spend money like crazy. And I learned a lot though. And I loved it. I loved that time because I was traveling the whole country, meeting all these new, innovative companies. And I was doing well. I actually, when you bring up the goal, it like brings back my memories, because that's how I made my first like millions of dollars at a young age. Was I would fly to a company called Great Panther Silver. I went into their mine.
Oh yeah, it's fucking crazy going into the mine, right? Like deep into the earth. Yeah, and it just keeps going down. You're like,
I was like, thank God there's a guy with me.
Like more down, like more down. Like, more down. Like, really? Yeah. We're pretty. Like, is this like, was this Mordor? Like, where are the demons going to be? Like, is Gandalf with us? Because we might be digging too deep in this spot. Yeah. Really fucking interesting.
Yeah. But then when the recession hit, that was because again, that was right now before Elite Daily again, all the money that I had made, I lost all of it. So I went from, and it was a great moment, a moment I cherished, because I was like this Justin Bieber like kid. Like I had made all this money, never had it. I took care of my family, but like I was buying 2 Bentleys and I had the penthouse.
2 Bentleys.
Yeah.
You know why? Because 1 Bentley is bullshit. It's not enough. Like for a man to have 1 Bentley, like fuck you. Just one? You fucking loser.
That's hilarious. Oh man. Yeah. So that's it. I was that douche, man. I was that douche. Yep, I was. Just it was cool. I remember like for my 24th birthday, it was fun. I flew every one of my best friends from high school to Miami, took out a 150-foot yacht, got my whole family on the boat. It was like I was like this little mini Wolf of Wall Street kid on this boat.
That's so dope. That's so dope.
Yeah, except it didn't sink. but what did sink was when the market crashed, and I was this cocky kid who thought I had
fully
it all.
invested in the market.
Fully invested in market. I was up 20 million in the market. Mid-20s, thinking I had
leveraged.
The world.
I'm sure.
Yeah, leverage margin.
Yeah,
and then boom, I get crushed.
Whoops.
And in that moment, that's the first moment in my life that I learned about ego. Mm-hmm. And it was like, oh, now I have to sell those cars. Now I have to move out of the penthouse, it was tough. And my mother was the catalyst for me not becoming, going down the path of like self-destruction. Yeah. She was like, that was the moment she told me, like when she came here from Cali, she was like, I never wanted to tell you this, but when I was the oldest of your uncles and aunts, and we had a studio apartment, and she's like, classic story. And she's like, I'm walking home from school. I'm probably 15 years old, and the apartment building's on fire. And I thought, everyone was going to be like dead. I run home. Luckily, your grandparents got out. Your Uncle George, your Uncle Louie, Aunt Liz, they all got out. And she's like, but we really rapport, but now we literally had nothing. And she was like, I had to, as the oldest sister, had to go to Canal Street, drop out of school at that age, convince my teacher. And she's like, you're crazy. And she was like, no, like, if I don't do this, my family can't eat. So they were like, okay, you got to come for some night classes and things. And my mom went here in the city to Canal Street in the middle of the winter and watched stands to make a little bit of money for my grandparents to rebuild. Mm-hmm. And now she's telling me this, she starts like basically crying to me. Like, I didn't want to have to ever tell you that I had to go through this. Yeah. And I saw my mom work 7 days a week with me and my sisters. Yeah. My mom was just like, she worked, man. She was a mom, super mom, and worked. My mom and dad were a team. And so my mom's crying to me, telling me this. And she's like, so if I was able to get through that shit, Gerard, you can lose everything, but they can't take this and they can't take this. And she points to her heart. And I was like, all right, I got to go bounce back. I got to do this again. Yeah. So I was like, what am I great at? And that's again where I was like, I love content. I love storytelling. So right before Elite Daily, I was like, well, first, what I want to do is I have to tell the story of what's happening with our economy, because every kid that I went to high school with now is graduating college and they can't get a job. They have a worthless degree and they have college debt. And all of them are watching the Kim Kardashians or the Jersey Shore on reality TV. And they're not paying attention to what's really, truly happening with the economy of the United States. Yeah. So I decided to start making documentaries about the economy, about the dollar, about the student loan debt crisis. And then that is when I had an intern working with me who was like, hey, why don't we start a publication? And he was like, let's start Elite Wall Street. And I was like, fuck no. And I was like, we got to think bigger than that. And at that moment, we were like, whoa, like we have to go to so many different websites, similar to your story when you created Onnit. You know, for us, it was like we were these like young millennials, and we felt we had to go to all these different websites to get the news that we wanted. You know, whether it was health, business, dating, humor, entertainment, it was to go to all these different websites. And then most of them were handed down to us, and the people writing it are like over the age of 40 years old. So we're like, let's create the voice of Generation Y. Let's cover every one of these. And we were naive. We didn't have any. People were like saying our site's bullshit because, we didn't have a journalist background or have a degree. But that was the beginning. We bought it for $9.99 on GoDaddy. It was in my apartment, not the big one with like folding chairs, me and a couple, young guys. And I was the big brother of the bunch. This was the first time in my career now that I kind of felt that I had to step up as more of the mentor rather than the mentee. Yeah. And I told my co-founder, David, that I was like, you're going to be the CEO. He was 19 at the time. And I was like, I gave him the belief. And I took more of like this, like a president, more of like looking at the strategic partnerships and figuring out like more of the financials and kind of the macro. And he was the one who kind of like took over the micro. And then we had another co-founder, Jonathan San Pedro, who I love, man. He's like the rock. Yep. And he was just work ethic like no other. He was our COO. And man, that was a wild journey, but a lot of people don't know how did that, they think like it kind of maybe that my career started with Elite Daily. Sure. And it didn't.
Well, it's, in order to even put someone in as CEO to a thing that you had kind of been the initial impetus for requires a surrender of a certain amount of ego, right? It requires a surrender of those three letters that a lot of people hold as so valuable. Like there's so many people who have no business that hand me a card that says CEO of some fucking bullshit ass business that hasn't even started yet. And it's like, here I am, CEO of fucking, I wish this was a company.com, like, okay, cool, man. But you have to learn that doesn't fucking matter. What matters is like, am I creating something of value, and is my heart in it? Is this something I want to be involved in, and is it of service to people? It doesn't. Well, the letters on my name, like that doesn't fucking matter. Yeah. That's the second Bentley. Like that doesn't matter at all. And I think you probably had to have all of those lessons, all of those reflections of the ego, to be able to be like, oh yeah, we can fucking do this. And that doesn't matter what letters I have. I know what I'm here to do. I know how I can help. I know how I can build the team that can do that. Yeah. But it's interesting how like you're not going to be able to create that thing that you can ultimately create until you're ready, like really ready. And for you to get ready, you weren't ready yet. You had to get fucking smashed.
Yeah,
you had to get smashed first, and then feel the resilience and the learning of that smashing in order to reach the success point that you've had. Yeah. And you can learn from other people. I learned a lot of lessons about ego from a lot of these other companies that would fail and mismanagement. And I remember one company I was in, it was a CEO came from a big company, and he came to this little company that was just raising money and trying to figure it out. And the first thing he did was lease the most expensive office possible. Well, that just drove up the fucking burn rate to an obscene amount. And it just drained the money far quicker than they were able to actually explore and find the resources that they were looking for. And it's like, why did you want that big office? Oh, because your identification was the one who was in the corner office that looked like this, not about like, oh, how can I fucking help this company the most?
This is so important, especially for a lot of the young, young entrepreneurs that I mentor now. Like I look back and I'm like, I'm so happy that I lost all that money. I'm so happy that I I don't regret the fact that I bought those cars and did all those things, because now I don't need that. Now I recognize like that wasn't who I was. That's not my identity. So, even a lot of them, I'm like, if you need to get that out of your system, go ahead, do it. That's part of your journey, man. Go for it. Go for it. And there's nothing wrong with it. But now, because I still love nice things, it's just that now totally I've learned that none of that is what correlates to who I am and my happiness and my identity anymore. But I had to go through a lot, man.
I think that's, one of the things that it is one of the great ways to learn is you have these things that you give. I think, I just had a conversation with Mark Manson, and he talked about you give certain things God power, like you worship these certain things, and success and money can be one of those things. And it's hard to know that it's not God, and it's hard to know that it's not the most important thing. And until actually you collapse that illusion by actually achieving it, So I think you could probably stay, if money and success in that material fashion was that thing that was most important, and you were just chasing it your whole life and never got it, that's a harder way to learn, because you'll never know, like, oh, I got it and it wasn't it. There's still so much more out there, So but a lot of it is, and you can learn from other people. It doesn't have to be you. And that's a skill that we also have, but that is kind of part of the hero's journey, is you get what you want. And then if you're aware, then you realize, okay, now what do I really want? Like, what is the truth about what is going to make me the most fulfilled, the most free, the most happy, the most of service, the most of all.
Yeah, because, for me, it didn't stop, right? Elite Daily became the next thing.
Yeah.
Right? Because now all of a sudden it went from, well, we can do this, it's naive, to, oh, now we have 80 million unique visitors. Now we have 200 employees. Now we have the cool, cool culture, and we have this big publication. So the next lesson for me was the exit, because again, people were praising this exit, and for me, I didn't want to sell the company, because I was so like, no, Elite Daily is it. Like, this is, it's bigger than money for us.
Yeah.
This is a brand. There's a brand here. We've created a movement. We've created a culture around this. Like, I was so attached to that brand.
Sure.
So when we sold, a lot of people don't realize, like, I went into a depression, because now it's like, oh, that again, I was attaching my identity to it, to the fact where I was like, oh, like, and you sell a company, what happens? People want you to go and speak about it. They want to pull you all these things, and it's crazy. But they don't really recognize what went on beforehand. And then for me, I had to go through losing it to then realize, what is my purpose? Like, why am I here? Right? It wasn't Elite Daily. It wasn't all these things I've done. Like, why am I here? Who am I? And I think so many millennials, like, it takes a long time for us to really, truly think and ask that question, because from such a young age, we're conditioned, especially here. We're just talking about this in the elevator. I really genuinely believe that, right? Especially in the US, it's like, so much, we're conditioned so much. It's out of control from a very young age. So, I was talking about this with Jay Shetty on my show, it's like, you're feeding this beast your whole life of like ego, and then so it takes a long time for you to finally, and like, you have to go through so many different challenges of losing things, and, hitting rock bottom, and going through maybe depression, maybe losing, the love of your life. I don't know, going through those really dark moments. And for me, a lot of people were praising me for this exit, but deep down inside, I was like, I lost my identity. I didn't know what was next. I didn't know how if I just didn't feel like I lost my purpose in a sense, and I had to go and figure out that wasn't it, And then I was able to start asking the right questions. I think it takes a long time, because that's what I think pulls out. Gets you out of the conditioning. You have to start asking yourself the right questions. And when you live in a time where it's so much information now. You got social media every single day. It's comparison, like every day you're looking around, it's hard for you to pull back and go through that soul searching, and to start asking yourself, like, who are you?
Yeah.
What matters to you? Why are you here?
Which is kind of all the same question in a certain way, because like, when you really know who you are, then you know what your song is and what your medicine is and why you're here. And it all gets kind of very much gets smaller and tighter, and as the marble goes down the funnel towards the loop of all of these questions. But I think that's your path that you took, the courage to keep going and experiencing has allowed you to accelerate that path like dramatically. And I think that's one of the key lessons. And when I mentor people too, it's like, you got to fucking send it, because whatever you learn, whatever happens, success, failure, like the faster you can get to that thing, the faster you get the learning, the faster you learn about which questions you need to ask. But if you hold back and you kind of, avoid and avert your eyes and distract yourself with this or that, and you get into a relationship, but you don't really open yourself to love and you don't open yourself to vulnerability, you'll delay your learning process. But if you just fucking send it.
You can't avoid. You can't avoid.
You got to run right into
it. Right. You got to walk into that fear, walk into it, and I think that's like the number one thing that I've learned is like being resilient. I think that's it, man. In life, it's just, you got to be willing to realize that you're going to go down. It's just, it's life. You're human. You're going to get punched in the face. You're going to get kicked. You're going to get scarred. You're going to, it's going to happen, and you just got to keep moving forward. You got to look for that lesson, and I know you talk about this. I just watched your video, but you just went through, with the accident. And I was just like, man, that was the most beautiful video I've seen in a fucking long time, man. Really, really beautiful. And I was just like, that's it, bro. It's you got to go through that stuff. And I'm really glad that you talk about these things, because a lot of people, they don't, when they go through something like that. It scars them to the point where they don't look for that lesson immediately.
Yeah. Yeah. To know that everything that's happening is happening for you.
Right.
And if it's happening, you're doing something right because you're fucking learning.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that I learned from my friend Tim Kennedy, who's like top of the special forces, got to the high ranks of the UFC, is now on a successful TV show. I mean, excelled at so many things. He has the attitude of, when he goes to train or when he goes to do something, he goes, well, how fast can I fail? Like, how fast can I get to failure in the gym? And like, to him, that is like, because the faster he gets to failure, the faster he learns where his failure point is, And so that's allowed him to accelerate so far. It's like an embrace of the inevitable failure, the failure of the human body, the anabolic system or the aerobic system or anaerobic system, whatever system he's testing to that point. And Bodie Miller, the Olympic, skier and gold medalist, and same thing. Like, he would push himself to failure so he would learn. Like, oh, okay, well, here's my capacity, but I know that that's my capacity because I didn't just fucking half-ass it and stop. Like, I went and I sent it till I fucking learned, what that thing is. And that embrace of that moment of an acceptance of our limitations and what we know at the time, and then being able to reflect upon that and be like, wonder if I ate a little different, if I would have been able to do that different. I wonder if is this overtraining? Am I actually diminishing my capacity? Am I accelerating my capacity? Or you start to be able to really analyze and have data sets from that effort.
Yeah. And
also the mental framework of knowing that failure is just not a failure, never a failure. There's no such thing. Failure is a fucking myth.
Yeah.
It's a lesson, like, it's just a lesson. And then you actually, you could say, well, you could die. Yep, you could die. But then you could also kind of imagine an infinite soul who's here in multiple lives and multiple bodies. And you just learned this one time, and okay, it was a failure in this life, but guess what? You're still learning for the next time.
Yeah.
But, and obviously that's a hypothetical scenario. It's something that I believe personally, spiritually, but, there's always a perspective where you can say, like, everything is just this arc of learning. Yeah.
I mean, this past year has been definitely the most transformational for me as thinking about what makes a great leader. It's the reason why I've created my show, Leaders Create Leaders. And I went through having a really hard time last year, and I met a Navy SEAL, and I know you talk a lot about these mentors of yours that have served. And this one moment and these three questions kind of really changed my life. And I was in a point where when I was going through that, searching for that purpose and trying to figure out who I was, and I decided I really wanted to be a mentor. I wanted to be someone who was a role model for this generation. And I wanted to redefine the word influencer in a world where it's just all about the followers and the likes and the views. I was like, I want people to know what it truly means to be a servant leader, to go out there and to be conscious about the impact that you can make on others. So I went to Newark, New Jersey, where my grandparents and my parents immigrated and where they grew up, and went to one of the worst hoods and built an incubator in that hood and started educating and working with the inner city youth and teaching emotional intelligence and financial literacy and entrepreneurship and things that I wish I learned at a young age that I felt helped me have the attributes to create the success that I have in my life. And in doing that, I was like super stressed out. Like I was doing it and I was like, this is something I felt was a part of my purpose, but internally, I for some reason was like kind of just broken inside. I felt like I had to be this superhero. I thought that being a leader was putting on the cape, being a superhero, going to the worst part in the hood, being there for the team, showing up every day, being the best every single day, grinding every single day, showing up every single day. And then I was at home, I was just like, holy cow. I went through a really bad breakup, 4 years, thought we were going to, I thought she was the one. And so at home, going home, I was broken. And I met a Navy SEAL. It was Memorial Day weekend last year. I was shooting a Leaders Create Leaders shoot. I'm in this bar and here this guy walks in. He has an army hat and this other guy walks in looking like Sylvester Stallone, like Rambo. I'm like, oh, yo, this is, so I go right up to these guys. I'm like, yo, have you guys served? And they have a girl with them. She's like, yeah, absolutely. He served for like 30 years. He just got out on relief. And I was like, listen, in this country, so many of us, we all, admire and look up to these celebrities and influencers, but you guys are the real heroes. And I was like, would you mind if I buy you a beer? And he was like, hell yeah. So she's like, thank you so much. Not everybody does this. And I just talked to these guys and got to know them. And the other guy was a SEAL, but he wouldn't open up to me. But they're asking me what I'm doing. I'm like, well, I'm in Newark. And I told him a little bit about my story. And anyways, that day ends, right? Monday comes, it's Memorial Day. And I'm telling my family, I'm telling everybody, I'm so excited. I just made a SEAL and a guy who served for 30 years. And, I was just, I had pride, listening to these guys tell me that they made that sacrifice for our freedom. And I go back home to Newark, 2 weeks. I'm back to being Superman. And I'm home. And I get a phone call. My team's like, gee, there's a Rambo looking guy here, 6 a.m. And I go and, go to the incubator and there he is. His name's Paul.
So you meet this guy, Paul.
Yeah. So Paul's in my incubator and basically he's like, listen, I had a calling. He's like, I don't know. I'm not supposed to be here because I'm still in San Diego. I'm still on duty. He's like, I don't make a lot of money, but he's like, I just felt a calling. I know I can help you and I had to come here. And now I'm looking across at this guy. I'm like, I can't believe he traveled to Newark, New Jersey. He's still serving as a SEAL. What would, and he's saying he had a calling. He felt like so he looks me in the eyes. He's like, so how are you? And in that moment, I was like, all right, if there's ever a time I'm going to be really fucking vulnerable and honest right now, this is the time to do it. So I was like, to be honest with you, bro, I'm fucking broken.
So wait, is this the SEAL or is this
the SEAL?
This is the SEAL.
This is the SEAL that wouldn't open up to me as much.
Just watching, just observing.
Yeah, this is the SEAL. His name's Paul. And, he starts talking to me and I'm like, I'm trying to be this leader. I'm trying to, show up every day. And he's like, listen, he's like, first of all, he's like, you have to realize that your whole, because I was also worried about my team being stressed. And he's like, if you keep trying to show up like this every day, he's like, how do you think that's going to make the people around you feel? He's like, when I'm a SEAL, if one of us goes down, we need to know that the rest of us need to know to pick that person up and to pick them up and carry them out. He's like, so you have to start being vulnerable. You have to be that transparent. You can't, and you have to start to, focus on that, focus on you. And then he said to me these 3 questions because I was concerned about, just moving forward. And he's like, listen, he's like, answer these 3 questions. If the answer to these questions are yes, you got to always do it. And he's like, if it's the hard thing for you to do, if it's the most uncertain thing for you to do and the most uncomfortable thing that you can do, as long as it doesn't impede on anyone else's happiness, you got to do it. And now, not only have I realized I could take that cape off and I just got to focus on living my best life, being the best leader I could be for me inside. And then I started going through, I told you, a lot of spiritual work and a lot of, being a lot more vulnerable with my team, being honest, stop chasing certain things that I felt were attached to success instead of external
validation versus internal fulfillment.
Yeah, a lot of that. And so, for anyone listening too, when we talk about, when I say like, ask those the right questions, I feel like those 3 questions for me are things I live by now, ever since Paul ingrained that for me. So anytime I feel like this is the hard thing, the most uncomfortable, most uncertain thing to do, I drive forward. And then also, he kind of really, really redefined for me how to be a great leader.
So much of the value of anything is on the other side of that uncomfortable thing. That is like probably one of the big staples. Well, it's a staple of fucking Stoicism, first of all. It's not like I fucking invented this or any of us invented this or even the Navy SEAL invented this. Like, we've known for a long time that in applying yourself to that challenging point of resistance, that obstacle, that sticking point, like the magic is on the other side, because all of those things are things that are trying to deny our true potential and our true power. Like anything we give that unnecessary amount of importance to, that creates the fear and whatever else. I mean, yeah, there's actual danger. Like, be mindful of actual danger, you know what I mean? But those things that emotionally we're scared of or that don't correlate to actual danger, like your power as a human being, your own, surrender to your omnipotence that you have within yourself, obviously understanding that everybody else is omnipotent too. So we're in this co-created situation, but it's a surrender to actually how powerful you are and not allowing and worshiping the fear and giving it so much ability to try to master you, by saying like, oh, I can't do this because I won't think about that. You have to go right at that stuff and say like, okay, I've been holding you up as this idol and it's become more important than my understanding of myself. Let's see what's on the other side of this. Yeah,
it's like not neglecting the fact that we all have fear. It's like
all of us.
It's part of it. It's part of this mind of ours that's just built to try to make us survive, and it's just, learning to be aware of it, be conscious of it, and
lean in.
And like you said, like learn from it. Maybe you go down, maybe you fail, but that's their growth. That's going to build your character. That's going to help you learn what's next for you. And that's the biggest thing that I learned in doing when I went and did 5-MeO DMT.
Oh shit. Here we go. I love it. Didn't know this was coming, but let's bring it.
Yeah. I mean, that to me, I didn't even expect it. And right after that meeting with the SEAL, I had an entrepreneur that I didn't know what the hell I didn't even know what DMT was. I didn't know anything about any of this stuff. I was scared. It was right after he gave me those 3 questions. I befriended Daniel DiPiazza. He spoke at my event and he's like, G, I just want to bring you to my shaman. Don't know what a shaman is. He's like, I think it would really help you. And we're going to go through this. It's the medicine and it's natural. It's within you. He's telling me all these things. Next thing I know, I'm like, all right, it sounds like this is the Matrix and you're giving me the red pill or the blue pill here.
Yeah.
And at that moment, I looked over at my my partner in the show, Digital Jeff, and he's like, hard thing, uncomfortable, uncertain, G, if you live by, and I'm like, all right, let's do it.
Here's your chance.
And that was like going through that process. Wow. Like not only did it force me to, at the deepest level, commit to leaning into fear, but it allowed me to open up to a level of self-love that I've neglected my entire life as an entrepreneur. Let me go right at the fact of like how I was trying to prove everything to the world. Like I faced all of this stuff like so head on. And then I felt such self-love once I be able to let go of it, detach, like die. And it almost gave me this like, this confirmation afterwards of that the warriors within and that like God is real.
Because you felt it.
Oh,
that's why they call it the God particle or the God molecule, right?
Yeah.
It's like, it's a different fucking thing.
Yeah.
It's not for everybody. And I'm not like an advocate. I'm not saying everybody go do it because you have to be called to it. You have to be in the right space, the right setting, the right time, the right.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But when it all goes right, which it often does, it's a fucking different thing. It's a knowing.
I mean, it totally just like changed me and just, I don't know if changes evolved. I evolved. Yeah. I shed pieces of ego that and fear and stories that I've had for a really, really long time that I didn't even realize I was suppressing. So many of us don't even realize that we're things that we're suppressing, and it then once I came out of that, man, I was just like, oh, okay. Like, wow. You know, I was like, there is life after all of this. It makes you feel almost like you're on your deathbed and you realize what really matters. Mm-hmm. What really genuinely matters. Why am I so freaking worried? Why do I care so damn much about all this shit? You know what I mean? Yep. And then, you know, what's interesting is we still go back into it. We're still in this world of like, you know, I feel that's what I've learned. I just interviewed Susie Batiste, who built Poopery. She's done ayahuasca over 100 times. And what I've learned is like the practice of some of the people that I've interviewed, that
Wait,
the people go,
the irony that someone who's done ayahuasca 100 times made poopery is not lost on me, because everybody's shitting their pants when you're doing ayahuasca. Yeah. The very first time I did it, I remember the woman next to me was like, I can't tell if I actually shit my pants. I imagine I shit my pants. And if you've done 100, you've been in a lot of shitty situations. So for sure you're making poopery. That makes fucking perfect sense.
Oh, that's so great. Yeah, amazing. And that's
so I derailed you. You had some point that was gonna be about her.
Like it's just hearing from her the practice of it, how she continues the practice. It's not recreational, but the practice of it. And every time, you know, you shed a little bit more and you get a little bit more aware even without it on a day-to-day basis through meditation and through practices and through things that I want to spend way more time with you learning and vibing with you on, how to just being present, you know, being really, really present. Like, I'm going to give you one example. I just went to Iceland 2 months ago, and I have, you know, learned to master being present. And that gift of learning that in itself, to me, like being in front of a waterfall and not caring about putting it on Instagram and not caring about, you know, like all that stuff, just really being present. And in that moment, by mastering that, the most beautiful rainbow formed right in front of my eyes, perfectly around me. I'm watching this thing form and I'm just like, this is our planet. Like, this is Mother Earth. Like, it looked like a freaking realm like just formed, and it was all the water hitting me from the waterfall went from cold to warm, and I just felt one with earth, one with God, one with myself. And I wouldn't have had that experience, I don't think.
Yeah. If plant medicine hadn't shown you the way.
Yeah.
You know, because that's, I think, one of these key things is it's not the only way you access, but it shows you, it builds that bridge. And then you can traverse that bridge with breath, with meditation, with satori, with nature. Nature is as powerful a medicine as anything out there. And you're surrendering yourself to the present, which is that state that we're all aiming for, because that's really where the magic is, and the love is, and the bliss is, and we express ourselves as love. But the plants, and in this case might have been the toad if you were doing 5-MeO, but the plants and animals and these tools that we have, these medicines, can help show us that spot. So then we can find our way back more evenly, more commonly. And that idea of shedding too is like deeply embedded in the traditional ayahuasca culture. That's why the anaconda is the sacred animal, because the anaconda sheds its skin, as all snakes do, fully in one piece. It sheds its skin so that it can grow into the new version of itself. And that's the metaphor for the ayahuasca journey itself. You shed this layer, this psychic layer of your old scales of that which has been constricting you, so that you can grow into that slightly bigger version of yourself, you know, that slightly more expanded, the slightly more free, and that's really what these things can do, is just allow you to shed that which was old and constrictive, so that you can be what you are. And you find that over and over. It's not like it's adding new things. It's almost like allowing you to get rid of those little prisons and little restrictions and those little things that are holding you back. And then you actually get to be who you are.
I feel like humans, we complicate the shit out of everything, out of life. That's what it is. And when you go through that, you realize how much we actually complicate things, how much we actually overthink and complicate everything about this life. And I read this most beautiful poem recently, and it talked about, you know, it was almost like, it was a fictional type poem that I feel is like pretty much reality. And it was talked about a person who dies and goes to heaven and meets with God. And the story of what God explains is that he made him go back into a new life, right? A whole nother reborn, but now as a completely different person, different ethnicity, different color, different weight, different everything, right? And what was the lesson? God continues to do this over and over and over again, over and over and over again in the poem, because he wants everyone to realize he's going to do it until everyone realizes. And I had this message when the last time I did DMT and Joshua Tree was, Gerard, it's so complicated, but everyone's complicated. It's so simple. Love.
Yep.
That's it. If we all can just be love each other, love ourselves. That's it. One word, love.
I've often said, and I've had that same experience, and it's led me to believe that there's two forces in the universe: love and delusion. Because there is only love, and everything else is a belief that there isn't love, that this isn't love, that this thing isn't love, that this all isn't love. Right?
Yes.
It's like love and delusion. That's it. That's all we got.
I know.
And fear tends to fall on that delusional side, but it's also love itself. And that's the delusion of fear, is that understanding we're in a world that contains fear. And so that's love too, because that's what part of the learning process. That's part of the thing that's going to educate us and allow us to grow. Love and delusion.
Yeah. I mean, there's just so much, the culture I love right now. I'm loving like looking at history and looking at the history of humanity and different cultures and everything, because obviously all that stuff is what has created this delusion and created these stories and created things that have shaped who we are. So I've been really just diving deep into that. I'm sure, I can learn a lot from you.
Well, it's going to be fun, man. It's going to be fun to like jump in there and share what I've learned and learn what you've learned. And, it's so beautiful for me to talk to people who've engaged on the experiential path, because the lessons, it's rare that you talk to someone who's done something like 5-MeO or ayahuasca and they report their stories. And I'm like, that doesn't make any fucking sense.
Right.
You're like, well, whatever conclusion you drew is like it's the truths are all, and it's like you find that at the core of most of the core major religions too, is like, as Paul Selig once said, there's diamonds poured in a mortar of distortion, but the truth, like all the diamonds tend to be the same. Like live presently. God is everywhere. It's all love.
I was listening to you on stage at Entrepreneur Live, and you had talked about energy amongst obviously a lot of things. And then, I think everyone kind of is in agreement that like we are this, we all have this energy around us. And I was thinking about coming in, we were going to do this podcast, and I was like, man, there's this little place in Chinatown. I don't know if you've ever been to it, and it's like a certain camera. And have you ever done this?
No.
They take this Polaroid picture of you. You got to go into this weird like jewelry store, back of this jewelry store, and there's like this monk guy, and he has this crazy camera. He takes a shot of you, and it creates an aura. I want to do this with you, of your energy. And based on the colors, depends and there's lessons around whether you're stressed or you're, or the judgments there, all these like ancient Asian, what's the word? Basically, mythology of energy is based on these colors and everything. And I said to myself, I was like, I want to take Aubrey to do this because I know he believes in energy, because I believe I do believe
in energy. I'm not sure it can be captured by a Polaroid though.
Okay, cool. Okay. No,
so I'm going to come in as a skeptic, but I'm happy to take some Polaroids with you. Do we leave our pants on when we take these Polaroids? Like, what are we doing? Just our pants on. All right, got it.
But let's just say, right? Let's just say that it is true. What would it look like if we did that around our planet? And we saw the energy of all our individuals, of where the suffering really lies, where the love really lies. And we saw each other as that energy based on the suffering and the love and the healing and stuff like that. It's kind of an interesting concept that I wanted to bring to you.
In Peru, you'll see the rainbow flag flying everywhere. And for us, rainbow means, okay, it's homosexual. Like you go to the rainbow section of South Beach, it means you're fucking partying. And it's a different, that's what it means there. But for them, it's a spiritual teaching. And it's the teaching of the alignment of the chakras, the multiple colored alignment of the chakras flowing freely.
Right, that's right.
Right? And when the conquistadors came, their name amongst the people who could see, the shamans and the medicine keepers, who could see the energy of all of the alignment of the chakras, the rainbow people living with their heart, they called them the gray ones, because their ideas about religion and conquest and greed and all of this had actually blocked that energy so that they didn't appear that way. The energy was like basically the clouds in front of the sun, which creates the cloudy day. It's not like they didn't have those rainbow chakras inside themselves, but they'd created armor that they not only wore in steel and chainmail on their body, but armor that they'd put around all of their energetic sources as well. So they were known as the gray ones because that energy was obscured by the light. And that's, again, their own delusion, their own cloud cover that they put in front of their own light that was shining. And I'm sure there was obviously exceptions in the enlightened conquistador, whatever. I mean, I'm not going to generalize anything or any class of people, but yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely that force. And it's interesting because you can feel it too. Even those ideas of chi, I go through exercises with some people I work with that was taught to me by a Kung Fu master of like using your hands as bellows and combining it with breath until you can feel like almost like two opposing magnets of energy, like feeling in your hand. And for the billions of people that live in that Eastern tradition, it's like, oh yeah, that's chi, like duh. But like a Westerner does it and it can actually feel it, like somatically can feel something going between their hands. They're like, whoa, what is that? It's like this cold divorce from this idea that we are energetic beings. Of course we are. We're molecules that have mostly air and just atoms rolling around that are generating energy. We have brain waves that are projecting at different speeds and different times. We're so much more than we think we are.
Exactly. Yep.
And I think now, I think we've kind of worshipped what science has been able to prove so far and just said, well, that's it. That's everything. Well, guess what? Science is fucking exposing new things all the fucking time.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Like all the fucking time. So to say like, oh, well, what science has shown right now is the only way it is. And no, science is evolving too. And all of these things that are now,
well, think about how young we are.
Yeah. In that metaphysical and that's woo woo. Okay. Well, give it time.
Right.
Give
like
it
as a species,
give it some time,
still...
and let's see where this all goes. Cool. Be skeptical. Like I'm skeptical of those fucking Polaroids.
Hey, bro.
But I'm a fucking believer in energy, like undoubtedly. Yeah. Undoubtedly. All right. We got to wrap this up, but I want to give some concrete advice for entrepreneurs because I saw one thing that you did, which was cool, which is like you have these pitch contests and something like that. And everybody watching Shark Tank and everybody has like these ideas about, this widget or this thing. So when you're listening to these pitches and you're picking somebody who's like, okay, you have an idea, you're the person with the idea. Like, what are the things that you're looking for? And what are the things that those people listening who feel that calling to create and feel that calling to be an entrepreneur? Like, what are the things that you find the most compelling about their story, about their idea? Like, what are the commonalities between those?
Gosh, there's so many different things. The thing that comes to the top of my head right away is, are they coachable? Right? We talked about the ego and things like that. Like, I like to find an entrepreneur that is, even though they're coming and they want to pitch me their idea, they're there to learn. They're taking notes. They're willing to, they have the confidence, right? They have for more than anything for me, it's like you have the determination. Are you willing to have that resilience that I talked about, that when shit hits the fan and you don't have poopery and you basically, you have everything go wrong, because that's really what happens with entrepreneurship. It's there's going to be constant battles. I listened to one of your interviews, in the early days of Onnit, and you were saying like, even when you were going through those growing pains, you're like figuring out the processes. I had shit processes, then you had better processes. You had shit accounting, you get a better, learn about better accounting, better this, better. It's like throughout, no matter what, at all stages of your business and life, you're going to continue to have to learn from your mistakes. You're going to have to learn how to do things and optimize them and, automate better, systems and better processes and all that stuff. So are you coachable? Are you willing to learn and adapt fast? Yeah. Because whatever your plan is that you're pitching me on, I know for a fact it is not going to be that way in a year, let alone 5 years or 10 years from now. Yeah. They're the billion-dollar company you're telling me it's going to become. So if you're willing to say, I understand the problem clearly, and I have a gap in the market and a solution that I have talked to customers about and that they value, and that I can actually solve. And then you're willing to adapt along the way, and you're willing to prove that out by actually proving it, not because you believe in it, but because the people that you're helping and serving believe in it and feel that it actually brings value to them. And you're willing to have the determination and resilience and leadership to build that team and to know what it's like to empower that culture because no successful business is with a lone soldier. Then for me, I'm excited. And, I want to know that they also are very self-aware of what they're great at. I don't like the entrepreneurs that think they can do it all. I get it. I've been there. I've worn every hat too. Mm-hmm. And I think it's also really good that when you're an entrepreneur that you understand the different aspects of your business, but what are you going to do? Mm-hmm. No ego, forget about titles like you said earlier. What are you great at and where can you add the most value in your company? And again, don't have that ego. Bring in a CEO if you need to. Bring in the guy that's going to be able to do the finance. Bring in the girl who's going to help you with your marketing. Bring that team together. And for me, that's the winning combination.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fucking beautiful advice. And I love that. And there's a story that I like to tell too. And one of the things that I look for with anybody, an employee that I'm hiring or somebody that I'm wanting to back, is if they've proven that they can be great. Because to be great is hard. It requires resiliency. It requires being able to learn. It requires asking for help. It requires, you don't become great just like fucking, I'm just great. Like no way. But so one of the key people on my team is my executive assistant, Ian. And Ian started off at one of the entry-level positions at Onnit, and he was making shakes in the cafe. And he was the worst shake maker the company has ever had. The worst. I would actually literally go walk into the cafe to go get my shake. I get a shake every day at Onnit. And I'd go walk in and I'd see Ian and I go, oh, okay. And I'd fucking throw a U-turn because this shake is going to be shit and I don't want it. And but he was such a nice guy and so warm to the customers and so willing to learn and asking questions. And I was like, all right, cool. Obviously if you continue to suck this bad at making shakes, this may not be the spot for you. But then one day, I would order shakes and I'd get one. I was like, oh, this is really good. Who made this? And be like, Ian. I'd be like, Ian? Ian made the shake? And then over time, he became the best shake maker that Onnit has ever had, right? And it's not because he had some magical fucking culinary ability that was latent and hidden. It was just he was willing to learn and learn and learn and learn and learn and learn until he became the best at that. And I was like, oh, this motherfucker knows how to become great. He can become great at this really trivial thing, which is making shakes. I bet he could become great being the right-hand man of myself, my enterprises, all my whole picture. I bet he could become great at that. And sure enough, applying that same thing, he's become a great asset and a great member of my team. And I think that's really key. Greatness is itself a skill.
You're so right. It's one of the things I really admire about you, and obviously I'm sure all your guests that you bring on and you interview, and I'm interviewing all these unbelievable leaders and learning. It's every single one of us, we're addicted to learning. That's the common denominator. Yep. Every single one of us wants to learn. And it's because every day, right? We're going to learn things new. Everything's evolving. We were just saying science, technology, personal development, all these, physiology, all these things. There's never going to be things it's always, I'm addicted to it. I'm addicted to learning and becoming the greatest version of myself. And I think that that's what an entrepreneur needs to do. It's just be willing to say fuck, I can be better. How? Please tell me. I don't want to be the smartest guy in the fucking room. Tell me, how can I be better? And a lot of, I think, entrepreneurs in there early on, and I would tell you, don't think you need to prove yourself and be the best and have to show up and try to be something you're not. Be the person who's I'm here to learn. I want to learn. This is, understand what it is that you want to create and what you're good at, but be willing to learn and be addicted to it throughout the rest of your life.
The master is always a student.
Fuck yeah.
Great to have you on, brother.
Thank you so much.
This was awesome. Where should people follow you? Where's the best place for them to, obviously you got big social. That's awesome. But where else? Where should people look for you?
You gotta definitely check out my series. Aubrey's going to be on it. It's called Leaders Create Leaders. I've decided that, part of my passion is storytelling. So I travel the country in search of today's modern day leaders. And, the season 4, what I'm currently shooting is around conscious creators. So if you want to see Aubrey's episode, definitely check it out. It's on YouTube under Gerard Adams TV. I'm most active on Instagram at Gerard Adams. And it's this world. It's kind of easy to find everybody nowadays.
It is, man. It is. Beautiful, man. Glad we got a chance to drop in and look forward to doing more.
Fuck yeah.
Thanks, everybody. Peace.